Hello, my name is Keith, and these are my stamps. This is episode 22, Australian Antarctic Territory. As the name suggests, the Australian Antarctic Territory is Australian territory in the Antarctic. The name Australia, if you didn't watch the episode about Australia, comes from the Latin for southern. Antarctic means opposite to the north or opposite to the Arctic, and Arctic means near the northern bear, which not the polar bear, but the constellations Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. The Australian Antarctic Territory comprises about 42% of Antarctica. It's nearly 6 million square kilometres, 2,300,000 square miles. If it was a separate country, it would be the seventh largest in the world. Population in the summer between 200 and 500 people, and in winter about 80. And surprisingly, it has a cold and windy climate with wind speeds reaching up to 320 kilometers per hour, which is around 20 miles per hour. The history of the territory. In the 19th century, whaling and sealing expeditions took sailors into Antarctic waters. And then there was the so-called heroic age of Antarctic exploration from 1898 to 1922, when there were at least 17 major scientific and geographic explorations by 10 different countries. Douglas Mawson led the Australasian Antarctic expedition from 1911 to 1914, and then led the BANZAR, the British, Australian, and New Zealand Antarctic Research Expedition from 1929 to 1931, in which he claimed sovereignty wherever they landed for Britain. In 1933, the British government put all of these claimed lands in Antarctica under Australia's control. And later that year, Australia passed the Australian Antarctic Territories Acceptance Act. In December of 1947, the first Antarctic station was established at Heard Island. In 1954, the first permanent Australian base on Antarctica itself, named Mawson, after Douglas Mawson, and the Australian Antarctic Territory became under the jurisdiction of the Australian Capital Territory as one of Australia's 10 federated territories and the first overseas one. In 1961, there was the Antarctic Treaty. Antarctica was only to be used for scientific research, no military, and no further claims or expansion of claims from then on. The stamp issuing history. The 4 permanent research stations have post offices and have issued stamps from 1957 until the present. Stamps are often issued in mainland Australia before they're available in the territory, and stamps for both Australia and the territory are valid in both locations. The currency. From 1957 to 1966, it was the British Australian pound, shilling, and pence system. And then in 1966, the decimalisation 100 cents to 1 Australian dollar. On the left, we have some Australian stamps from 1954, and on the right, some souvenir labels, but both of which were issued to celebrate the first permanent base on Antarctica proper. In 1957, the first stamp inscribed Australian Antarctic Territory was issued, and it was this one, the 2 shillings stamp, showing the 1954 expedition at Vestfold Hill. The second series of stamps was issued in 1959. The 5D and the 8D are actually surcharged. The 5D was originally 4D and the 8D was originally 7D, neither of which were issued in their original denominations. Also note the 5D is a kind of black sepia color because in 1961 it was released in blue, this time as 5D inscribed and not surcharged. The same year, the 50th anniversary of the Australasian Antarctic expedition led by Douglas Mawson. The decimal currency issue from 1966 to 1968, a series of Antarctic scenes. These four are all from 1966. In 1971, these were issued. The 10th anniversary of the Antarctic Treaty, which you'll recall is the one saying it's just for scientific research, not for military, and no further claims or extensions of claims. On the 6-cent stamp, sastrugi, I had to look up what that was. They are parallel ridges caused by winds. If you recall that there are very strong winds, and it's not kind of the nice little wind that blows snow around, where we live. It's hard snow that is kind of eroded into these parallel lines. 1973, some of the wildlife that can be found in the waters around Antarctica, the Southern Ocean, including plankton and the Antarctic krill on the 1-cent stamp. According to the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research, whales, seals, birds, and fish combine to eat between 150 and 300 million tons of krill every year. That's 165 million to 330 million US tons. In 1980, the series of ships was issued. On the 1-cent stamp is the Aurora. That was the ship that Mawson and his team used for the 1911 expedition. The 15-cent stamp shows the Nimrod, which was Shackleton's ship for the 1907 to 1909 expedition. The Terra Nova is on the 22-cent stamp. That was Scott's ship for the 1910 to 1913 expedition, and the $1 stamp shows the Resolution. That was Captain Cook's ship when he crossed the Antarctic Circle in 1773, and it became the first ship to do so. Here is a cover with stamps from both the Australian Antarctic Territory and Australia on it. The stamp on the left is the one from the Territory, the one that's been put on sideways, from 1982, the birth centenary of Mawson. The Australian stamps, just out of interest, the 65-cent stamp is historic fire engines from 1983, and the one on the right is $1.10, showing the Australian USSR scientific cooperation in Antarctica of 1990, and it shows some krill. In 1988, here is some of more of the wildlife that can be found. From the left, hourglass dolphins, emperor penguins, crab-eater seals, Adelie penguins, and grey-headed albatross. 1992, a couple more birds. And finally, the most recent stamp I have from the Australian Antarctic Territory is this lanternfish from 2006. It's apparently the dominant species in the Southern Ocean, and their maximum length is 12.5 centimeters, which is nearly 5 inches, and they're called the lanternfish because of their bioluminescence. So, these are my stamps from the Australian Antarctic Territory. My name is Keith. Goodbye.